Muta Ali, welcome back to Upfront. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I'm great. Great to be here. Good to see you.
Absolutely. And so excited to be talking to you about your upcoming film, which is going to be premiering on HBO on Wednesday, August 12th. It is titled Yusuf Hawkins' Storm Over Brooklyn. And I remember this story. I want to say maybe the first time I heard about Yusuf Hawkins was in the Chubb Rock song, Treat Me Right, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he has a line in there where he says, "Let's not forget Yusuf Hawkins." I remember that. And so when I saw that this film was coming out, I had heard the story, but I didn't know the full story. And so that when I saw that you were attached to the project, I was like, I got to reach out. We got to have him on the show because the story is so timely. I told you offline, I've watched it 3 times. And this really took me back to Trayvon Martin.
Right.
I was like, this was Trayvon before there was a Trayvon Martin. So what brought you to this project as a director?
It's actually kind of a long story, man. Get started, you might have to cut me off. But I was 10 years old when Yusuf was murdered. So I have a child's perspective and a child's under awareness. So a soft recollection of it happening. I was living in New Rochelle, which is not far from Brooklyn, but I also was not directly affected like, say, my older cousins were. And so in 2016, a filmmaker named Victorious DaCosta gave me a call. He had seen Life's Essentials with Ruby D. That's the documentary I did with Javon Frank in 2014. He saw it and he said, "I really like what you did. I am in the middle of producing this documentary on Yusuf Hawkins. I'm interested in you coming on board as an editor." Now, I hate editing. I'm good at it, but I hate editing, right? So I was like, if the cause, if it's worthy cause, I'll do that. But let me do some research first. And so I got this book. It's called For the Color of His Skin. It's by John DeSantis. He was a journalist. Like he was hitting the beat, I guess you would call it, in New York in the 80s. He did a book about what happened to Yusuf Hawkins. I read that, and I determined shortly thereafter, okay, this story is definitely worth being told. Organically, I became the director of the film after some conversations, but I didn't sign on board to direct it just because it was about a young kid who got killed for the color of his skin. I didn't want to tell, and I don't want to just tell stories about Black people being victims just for the sake of telling the story. But what I determined was there's contemporary relevance to what happened to Yusuf beyond the fact that racism and deadly racism is alive today. There's a great deal of denial in the story. This takes place in New York in the 80s. And during that time, although I was 10, I remember being told New York was a melting pot of races. I remember being told that we're tolerant, that word tolerant was thrown around a lot, other cultures, etc. But New York was also very divided and very segregated, much like how it is now. If you look down at a map of New York, you look at where we live by race, we're very separate from one another. And I said, these factors, the way that we live separate from one another, prejudices that exist, denying that racism exists, which allows racism to fester, those factors were all in play in July of '89. August '89 comes around, and Yusuf Hawkins with his friends are going to Brooklyn to check out a used car. He ends up being cornered and murdered. And I don't think those things happen on their own. I do blame the people who did it. I do blame all of them for their actions. But things like that happen more frequently when we're in a system where we want to brand ourselves as being past the evils of racism, when really we need to look at ourselves and kind of heal more. So I said, you know what? I want to direct this film. Let's do it. And it was a team of 4 of us at first. It was me, it was Javon Frank, it was Victorious DaCosta, and Charles Darby, Yusuf's childhood friend. So in 2016, that's when it really set in motion.
So this has taken roughly about 4 years to come to the screen. Wow.
Absolutely. Even a little more than 4 years, because that was May 2016, and it's premiering August 2020. It's a long journey. Like I could share like a lecture on how many things it took for all this to come together. And but I'm happy. It's a blessing. It's really such a blessing. I was able to work with a great deal of talent. HBO, cream of the crop when it comes to documentaries. I remember growing up and seeing that HBO logo come on screen, and no matter what's about to play, it's going to be hot. So I'm so proud to be like part of their canon, you know, or have something that's part of their canon. So I'm happy. It's a blessing.
Can we talk about the process of pulling, because there was archival footage, there was video, it looked like there was homemade video. I mean, you guys really were able to unearth a lot of exclusive content. As you said, a lot of the players at that time, there's his mom, his brothers, a lot of the community leaders, folks that were there, that were eyewitnesses of what was happening at that time. And you guys were able to really pull all of those things together. So let's talk about the process of pulling all of that archival footage together for the film.
Yeah, that archive, I think, is one of the stars of the show. The moments like the morning after Yusuf was murdered, when Reverend Sharpton shows up outside the house after Yusuf's father calls him, and they say that prayer. When I saw that footage, I was like, oh my goodness, we have to show every little bit of this footage. It's just a key moment, and it's so natural for, I mean, just in my experience of being a Black person, for us to join together, hold hands, and pray at that moment when a tragedy strikes. And then the archive of the funeral with Minister Louis Farrakhan, his words are so powerful. And we got intimate archive of that chaotic protests, the chaotic protests and counter protests in Bensonhurst, partly because Dr. Lenore Fulani, her organization, had a great deal of home videos from people who were there protesting, and they kept these videos. And a lot of it hadn't seen the light of day. So it was exciting to get that. And on top of that, we had a gentleman named Ben Piner, who is the film's archivist. He did a deep dive, and he's very skillful. He did the archive on LA 92 about the response to the Rodney King beating. And that film is a feature-length documentary told only through archives. So Ben Piner is very skilled at getting the right historical moments together. And so with him on board, the archive was definitely on point. And it was exciting to me, you know, so part of the journey of making the film, you know, obviously I can't show everything I want to. The film just wouldn't be easy to watch, it'd be too long. But I've seen so much in the archive, and that's a star. That is a star of the show. I'm so glad to have had Ben Piner on board.
It was great to see that his family was so willing to, because a lot of times you may see a documentary, and because the story is so tragic, the family, you know, they're done talking about it. They want to move on with their lives. So it was really, really good to see that the family was so willing to come in and tell their story. Did you have any resistance from anyone that did not want to be a part that maybe was key to the story?
I did have some resistance, and I'll call them out, but only out of love, because I respect how challenging it is, and I have no idea really firsthand. But Luther Sylvester was one of Yusuf's closest friends, and Luther went with Yusuf that night on August 23rd to Bensonhurst, and Luther was attacked just like Yusuf was, surrounded by these young Italian men who had bats and guns. And Luther was maybe 16 years old. And that's traumatic for anybody, right? And then your friend gets murdered right in front of you. And then you get taken to jail and questioned. And then you're swept up in these marches, and they're expected to go back to high school. And when he was offered, you know, mental health assistance, he rejected it for his own reasons, you know. And he told me when we started the interview, he hadn't told anybody about what happened in 30 years. And he said, when I say anybody, I mean, he hadn't told his children, he hadn't told his friends, he hadn't told anybody. So he resisted, but I think he said yes, partly because I believe, I might be mistaken, Yusuf's younger brother, Amir, called him and said, you know, I think this is important. And he came up to New York and he spoke with me, and he opened up, and it took a lot of courage. Because you'll see in the film too, he walked us down to Bensonhurst where it happened, and unfortunately, he didn't know that he was about to do that. But when I asked him, he said okay. And I think that was, to me, the toughest part as a director is you have to get the story, but you're not dealing with actors, you're dealing with human beings with real trauma. And I actually had to speak with a therapist to make sure that I was not going to cause him more harm. You know, because you just say goodbye, you know, at the end of the thing. But he was brave, and we spoke afterward, and we met up at the mural last year with the family, and everything was fine. But that was tough.
Did you guys know or anticipate that this will be coming out at such a pivotal moment in the United States when we're about to elect our next president? There's rumors of race wars. There's a lot of tension in the air. Did you know or have an idea that this film will be coming out during such a pivotal time in our nation's history?
Absolutely not. I did not know. Something about my producing partner, Javon, he just had faith that this would, he said, you're going to be surprised how relevant this is when it comes out. I doubt, no one knew about all of the components, all of the things that we're facing now, but I think Javon had a hunch. No, I did know that we need to face our denial today. I think that's something that personally bothers me about us as Americans, and people who deny the fact that racism is a problem, deny systemic racism. And I see that any opportunity I had in the film to like show that somebody was full of it, I tried to. And no, I had no idea. I had no idea. And you know, people online maybe are making accusations that it's timed perfectly, too perfectly, like we're fueling the flames of something. But that's totally not the case. You know, the flames are here. You know.
What do you want audiences to walk away with from this film? I've got my own personal, which, like I said, I'll ask you that later. But what do you want audiences to walk away from Yusuf Hawkins' Storm Over Brooklyn?
Okay, I want people to know Yusuf Hawkins as much as they can know him from just hearing his friends comment and family comment about him. Just remember his name, and I want people to keep in mind that Yusuf Hawkins' family is still alive and thriving. But also, I think we might owe them a little tip of our hat in recognition and understanding the sacrifice that a lot of Black families make when their loved one is taken. They sacrifice their loved one's name for the cause, willingly, unwillingly, but they do it. And I think we should honor the Hawkins family for that. I want people, though, to see that Reverend Sharpton led people directly through Bensonhurst for a year and a half, from August 89 to January 91. It wasn't like a 1 week of marches or a month of marches. And I want people to appreciate that that was effective. That led toward the attackers being turned in by their own community primarily. And when I think of Breonna Taylor and the people who are out there causing good trouble, trying to get those killer police arrested, I want them to be inspired and understand that there will be some progress made, that if they keep pushing, that there will be progress. And one of the things that ties 30 years ago and now together is, unfortunately, it takes effort like that to find justice, but it works. It works.
Well, Muta, thank you so much for being a guest today on Upfront. Again, Yusuf Hawkins.